In this lesson, we're going to look at dividing polynomials. And so we're going to look at the first type, and the first type deals with a quadratic polynomial that has been divided by a linear polynomial. And so an example of that looks like this. So we have number one. So notice in the first set of parentheses, I'm going to have a quadratic polynomial. So it's going to say 2x squared plus 9x plus 1. So you see this is quadratic. So remember what makes this a quadratic polynomial is that if you look at the largest exponent, that the largest exponent is 2. And so notice I have three terms here. I have a squared term, so x squared. I have an x to the first power, and then I have a constant term. Okay, so we have this quadratic polynomial. This is being divided by a linear polynomial such as this, 2x minus 1. So notice this binomial. So we have this binomial. It is linear because the largest exponent of this expression here is 1, x to the first. All right, so that makes it linear. So this is quadratic, x squared. This is linear, x to the first. Okay, so when dividing polynomials, first thing you got to remember is that you're going to transform this into this idea here. So where you have your divisor and you have your dividend. It is very important that you know which of these polynomials is your divisor and which of these polynomials is your dividend. That should be a D right here, is your dividend. And so an easy way to remember that is this. If I had 8 divided by 2, I know I can rewrite this as 2 divided into 8, right? So your numerator is your dividend. So the numerator is your dividend. And your denominator is your divisor. So it's important to know which one's your divisor, which one's your dividend. Okay? And so to divide this, and you're going to be doing this by long division. So maybe I should say right here, divided by a linear polynomial using long division. So let's go ahead and do that using long division. Okay, so so this is your divisor. Now you know this, so that's your divisor, and this will be your dividend. Okay, in this course, for us, there are not going to be any missing terms. I'm using the word missing terms. Missing terms. In college algebra, the next course, when you talk about this again, you're going to have missing terms. But in this course, there are no missing terms. So if you look at this quadratic polynomial, there are 3 terms. You have your x squared term, your squared term, you have your x to the first term, and you have your constant. So x squared, x to the first, and your constant. In the linear polynomial, you have your binomial, x to the first, and your constant. All right, so for us, there are not going to be any missing terms. If there were any missing terms, you're going to see how to deal with that next semester. You would have to put a 0 term in its place. All right, so that's going to be next semester. For us, there are going to be no missing terms. So for type 1, when you have this quadratic polynomial, you're going to see 3 terms. Your linear polynomial, you're going to see 2 terms. Okay, so none are going to be missing. Okay, so let's go ahead and start talking about how to divide this using long division. So I have 2x minus 1 divided into 2x squared plus 9x plus 1. All right, and sometimes it's helpful as you go through the process to think about doing long division with numbers. So if I had 3 divided into, let's say, 234, let's say. So the first thing we did, remember, was we said 3 into 23, 3 going to 23 7 times, and then we multiplied, right? So we multiplied this number by the divisor. 7 times 3 is 21. And then we subtracted this from that, correct? So we said 21 from 23 is 2, and then I brought down the 4. And then I said 3, we do the process all over again. 3 to 24 is 8. Then I take this 8 right here, remember that? Take this 8, multiply by 3, and I get 24, and then I subtract again, and the remainder is 0 here. So your quotient is this part up here, that's your quotient, and then this is your remainder. Okay? So as we go through this, think about how you did long division with real numbers. Okay, so here are some steps. You're going to see these steps next semester again. So the first thing you want to do is to rewrite as long division problem. So we did. So long division. Then make sure that both polynomials are written in descending order, filling in any missing terms with a 0 term. But remember, for us, there are going to be no missing terms. We just have to make sure that it's written in descending order. So remember, descending order means to go from largest exponent to smallest. So notice I have x squared, x to the first, and then a constant. X to the first, and then the constant. So everything is written in descending order. All right, so that's the first thing you have to do. Second thing, we can divide the first term of the dividend by the first term of the divisor. And we're going to place that quotient above its like term. So here's what we're saying here. Okay, so step 2. So the first term of the dividend is 2x. Let me just go ahead and kind of do it here. So 2x squared, right? I have to divide that by the first term of the divisor, which is 2x. And then I simplify this division right here. So I have a monomial divided by a monomial. So we know that the 2's divide out, and x squared divided by x is just x, right? And so then I'm going to place this in the quotient part here, but I'm going to align my like terms. So this is x, here's your x. So this is your x squared column, this is your x column, this is your constant column. So I'll put the x here. All right, so we said first by first by first. Okay, so 2x squared divided by 2x, 2x squared divided by 2x is just x, because x squared divided by x is x. Then we place it there, and then once, remember that 7, once we did that 7, we said 7 times 3. So now we're going to say x times 2x minus 1. So let me write this here. So now we're going to say x times 2x minus 1, and then distribute. So x times 2x is 2x squared. X times a negative 1 is a negative x. That goes here now. So we're going to take this, multiply by this, and then put it here. So x times 2x is 2x squared. X times a negative x is a negative x. Notice everything is aligned. Now remember, once I said 7 times 3 is 21, you had to then do that subtraction, remember? So now what we have to do is this. So I've got to now subtract all of this. And notice I'm putting all of this in parentheses from these two terms up here. All right, now be careful. What some students like to do is to actually simplify this part right here, right underneath. So the opposite of 2x squared is a negative 2x squared. The opposite of a negative x is a positive x. All right, so you can do one of two things. You can say 2x squared, subtract 2x squared. Those cancel out, right? You can say 9x, subtract the negative x, means 9x plus x, right? So that's going to be 10x. So be careful how you do things. Sometimes it's helpful if you do this. So 2x squared, subtract 2x squared, means the same thing as saying 2x squared and a negative 2x squared, right? Which is 0. So those cancel out. If you're doing this correctly, this will always cancel out. And then 9x subtract a negative x means 9x plus x, which is 10x. All right, and then you bring down the next term, plus 1. All right, so that's where I'm at. So let's kind of look at this again. So the second thing we did was we divided the first term of the dividend by the first term of the divisor, and then we placed that above its like term. So 2x divided by x right here is x. So I placed x here. Step 3, multiply the quotient from step 2 by the divisor. and place that product below its like term. So I said x times 2x minus 1, which is here. Most students don't write this out. They know in mentally. Most students know mentally that x times 2x is 2x squared. X times a negative 1 is a negative x. All right? And then step 4 is to then subtract and bring down the next term. So we subtract right here. So we subtract, we got 10x, and then bring down the next term. So that's where we're at. All right, so now remember when we got this 24 right here, we did the process all over again, right? 3 into 24 is 8. So that is what step 5 is saying. Step 5 is saying repeat steps 2 through 4 until you have brought down the last term. So let's go ahead and do step 5. All right, so then we go through the process again. First term, 10x divided by the first term of your divisor, 2x. 10 divided by 2 is 5, and the x's divide out, and so you just get 5. So positive 5. So that goes here now, plus 5. Then we're going to multiply this term by the divisor. So basically I'm saying 5 times 2x minus 1. So 5 times 2x minus 1, 5 times 2x is 10x, 5 times a negative 1 is a negative 5, and that goes there. So we say 5 times 2x is 10x, 5 times a negative 1 is a negative 5. If you're doing this correctly, these first terms here have to be identical, just like they were here. 2x squared, 2x squared. 10x, 10x. They have to be identical. Okay? That's important to remember. All right, so now we're going to subtract. So we're going to subtract all of this from this. 10. Now remember, just like we did here, if you want to, go ahead and rewrite the equivalent part of this. The opposite of a 10x is a negative 10x. The opposite of a negative 5 is a positive 5. So basically what you're saying is this. 10x subtract 10x means the same thing as saying 10x and a negative 10x is 0. 1 subtract negative 5 means the same thing as saying 1 plus 5, which is 6. And then notice, remember you talked about the degree of a polynomial in a previous lesson? The degree, I'm using the word degree, the degree of 6, the degree of a constant is 0, and the degree of my divisor is 1. So once the degree of the divisor is less, once the degree of the remainder is less than the degree of the divisor, you're done. So your quotient equals x plus 5, and the remainder equals 6. So that's your remainder, that's your quotient. So sometimes you're going to be told to write it, say what the quotient is, and sometimes, and what the remainder is, or you can actually write it like this. So let me just remind you. Suppose we had 2 into divide into 11. So 2 into 11 will go 5 times. 5 times 2 is 10 with a remainder of 1, right? So I can write this as the quotient and the remainder. So in other words, I can write this as a mixed number. So 5 and 1/2. Remember that? So the remainder divided by the divisor. I can do the same thing here, except here's how you're going to write in terms of these expressions. The quotient, which is x plus 5, plus the remainder, so you have to use the plus symbol, plus the remainder, which is 6, divided by the divisor, which is 2x minus 1. All right? But for us, they're going to ask you to write it like this. So state the quotient, state the remainder. Next semester, this is how you're going to be asked to write it, as the divisor plus the remainder divided, the quotient plus the remainder divided by the divisor. Okay? So this course is how you're going to indicate your answer. This will be in college algebra. All right, so that's number 1. All right, just following the steps. Okay, let's look at another one. So the more you do, the easier it becomes. So number 2. So number 2, we have this example. We have 5 minus 14x plus 3x squared divided by x minus 4. All right, so 5 minus 14x plus 3x squared divided by x minus 4. So remember step 1, and there are no missing terms here for us. There are no missing terms. You will see them next semester. But the first thing you have to do, remember, is to make sure it's in descending order. So we have to rewrite that first quadratic polynomial, that quadratic polynomial in descending order. I've got to put the x squared term first, the x term second, and the constant last. So I've got to rewrite this. So this right here becomes 3x squared minus 14x plus 5 divided by x minus 4. All right, and so then we do long division. So this is your divisor, this is your dividend. So basically you're saying x minus 4 divided into 3x squared minus 14x plus 5. Okay, so we go through the process. We take the first term here of the dividend divided by the first term of the divisor. So basically we're saying 3x squared divided by x. So when I simplify this, this becomes 3x, because x squared divided by x is x. Now remember, we take this and we put in the quotient, but you put it over its like terms to make it easier to deal with. So I'm going to put 3x here. Once you do that, then we go to the next step. So remember, the next step, step 3, is to multiply that quotient by step 2. Multiply the quotient from step 2 by the divisor. So this is your quotient so far, 3x, and I'm going to multiply by the divisor, which is x minus 4. So I'm saying 3x times x minus 4. Using distributive property, 3x times x is 3x squared, and then 3x times a negative 4 is a negative 12x. But remember, most students don't write it out. Most students can mentally see that 3x times x is 3x squared. Now remember, the first column, the terms have to be identical, and they are. 3x times a negative 4 is a negative 12x. Notice the like terms, x squared and x. See that? That's important. Now we're going to subtract all of this from the first two terms up here. It helps, you don't have to, but it helps to rewrite what this is equivalent to. The opposite of 3x squared is a negative 3x squared. The opposite of a negative 12x is a positive 12x. All right, now let's go ahead and deal with what we have. 3x squared subtract 3x squared is 0. And that's what you want. You want this to cancel out. But remember, you can also say 3x squared and a negative 3x squared is 0, right? A negative 14x subtract a negative 12x, and here's why it was important to think about it like this, is the same as saying a negative 14x and a positive 12x. So let's think about what that is. What is a negative 14x plus 12x? Well, that's going to be a negative 2x, won't it? So we're going to put a negative 2x here, and then we bring down the next term. It's very simple, right? We're almost done. Then we do the process all over again. So I say the first term here divided by the first term of the divisor. So negative 2x divided by x. When I reduce, these divide out, you're left with negative 2. So I'm going to take negative 2 and I'm going to put it here. Now I'm going to multiply. So I'm going to take this term that I just wrote, negative 2, and I'm going to multiply by the divisor, x minus 4. And then I distribute, and I get negative 2x, and a negative 2 times a negative 4 is a positive 8, and that goes here. But again, most students just mentally look at this and write out what it is. So negative 2 times x is a negative 2x. If you're doing this correctly, this has to be identical, just like these were identical. And then a negative 2 times a negative 4 is a positive 8. So notice this is this. But remember, you have to subtract, right? So don't forget to do that. You have to subtract. So put it in parentheses and say I need to subtract. All right, it helps if you rewrite this right underneath. The opposite of a negative 2x is a positive 2x. The opposite of a positive 8 is a negative 8. All right, and then you can think of it this way now. A negative 2x subtract a negative 2x means the same thing as saying a negative 2x and a positive 2x, which is 0. They cancel out. If you're doing this correctly, cancel, cancel. 5 subtract 8 means the same thing as saying 5 plus a negative 8, which is a negative 3. And then notice your constant. You have a constant now, so you're done. So the degree of this constant is 0. The degree of your divisor is 1, x to the first. So you're done. So your quotient is 3x minus 2, this expression that's up here. And then your remainder is negative 3. And that's it. Now, remember the other way to rewrite this is to say the divisor, 3x minus 2, so you're going to see this next semester, plus the remainder, negative 3. I said the divisor, I mean the quotient 3x minus 2. So the quotient plus the remainder divided by the divisor, which is x minus 4. All right, but remember for us, this is how you're going to write it. You're going to tell me what the quotient is, and then you're going to tell me what the remainder is. All right, so that was number 2. Very simple, not difficult at all. Let's do a couple of more. So remember, in this course, there are no missing terms. So when you have this quadratic, you're going to see 3 terms. And when you have this linear factor, you're going to see 2 terms. So there are no missing terms. All right, number 2. So very simple, not difficult at all. So number 2, we have 6x squared minus 5x minus 6 divided by 2x minus 3. Now, just to remind you, this is number 3. So we all know now that this is the divisor, right? And this is the dividend. But I just want to remind you, basically what you're seeing here, just kind of if I said 8 divided by 2. So 8 divided by 2 means 8 divided by 2, right? So this divided by this means 6x squared minus 5x minus 6 divided by 2x minus 3. So sometimes you'll see this and sometimes you'll see this. Just know that they mean the same thing. So this expression is equivalent to this expression. All right. So this is your divisor and this is your dividend. So let's do long division. So 2x minus 3, and they're all in descending order, right? So we don't have to worry about that. They're all in descending order. 6x squared minus 5x minus 6. All right, so let's do the process. First, divided by first. The first term of your dividend divided by the first term of your divisor. 6 divided by 2 is 3. X squared divided by x is x. I get 3x. So that goes here. I'm going to put 3x above negative 5x. And then we multiply 3x times 2x. So I'm basically saying this, 3x times your divisor, right? So if you need to write it out, you write it out. And so then you distribute 3x times 2x is 6x squared. 3x times a negative 3 is a negative 9x. So if you have to write it out, you write it out. Or you can do it mentally. 3x times 2x is 6x squared. 3x times a negative 3 is a negative 9x. If you're doing this correctly, those two terms here have to be identical. Then we're going to subtract. Now it helps when you're subtracting to write out what this expression is equivalent to. So the opposite of 6x squared is a negative 6x squared. The opposite of a negative 9x is a positive 9x. All right, now let's go ahead and simplify this part here. 6x squared subtract 6x squared is 0, or you could say 6x squared and a negative 6x squared is 0 as well. A negative 5x subtract negative 9x, see that's complicated, right? But it makes it easier to think of it this way. A negative 9x plus, negative 5x plus 9x. So that's easier to think about. Well, negative 9x plus 9x, negative 5x plus 9x is 4x, right? So that goes here. Then we bring down the next term. And then we do the process all over again. First divided by first. So 4x divided by 2x is just 2. 4 divided by 2 is 2, and the x's divide out. And so I'm going to put that positive 2 here, so you must say plus 2. Positive 2. Then we multiply. 2 times 2x is 4x. If you're doing this correctly, those two terms have to be identical. 2 times negative 3 is a negative 6. Okay? All right, then I subtract. And so when I subtract, I get the, I'm going to go ahead and simplify this part. I get, let me make sure I did this correct. Okay, so it looks fine. All right, so then the opposite of 4x is a negative 4x, and the opposite of a negative 6 is a positive 6, right? So 4x subtract 4x is 0. That's what you wanted. You wanted these to cancel out, just the first to cancel out, just like this one. A negative 6 subtract negative 6 means the same thing as negative 6 plus 6, right? Well, negative 6 plus 6 is 0. So what we have now is this. So we have a constant. So now we have this. We have the quotient. The quotient is equal to 3x plus 2. And the remainder is 0. All right. Now, you can also write it like this. You could say the quotient plus the remainder divided by the divisor, right? But 0 divided by 2x minus 3 is 0, but that's still 3x plus 2. So 3x plus 2 plus 0 is 3x plus 2. But you can also write it like this if you want to. No big deal. Okay? All right. But this is actually what you're going to indicate in this course. All right, so let's do one more. So this is going to be number 4. So in number 4, we have 8x squared plus 6x minus 1 divided by 2x plus 3. So I'm going to write it like this. So remember, this is your dividend, this is your divisor. So I'm saying 2x plus 3 divided into 8x squared plus 6x minus 1. So they're all in descending order. So we go through the process. So I have this quadratic polynomial divided by this linear polynomial. So first divided by first. So 8x squared divided by 2x. So you must say the first of your dividend divided by the first of your divisor, just like this. 8 divided by 2 is 4. X squared divided by x is x. So I'm going to put 4x above the 6x. Then we multiply. 4x times 2x is 8x squared. If you're doing this correctly, those have to be identical. 4x times a positive 3 is a positive 12x. Then I subtract. But let's go ahead and rewrite this expression here. The opposite of 8x is a negative 8x squared. The opposite of a positive 12x is a negative 12x. All right, and now let's go ahead and simplify this. 8x squared minus 8x squared, that's easy, that's 0. Those always have to cancel. 6x minus 12x, or we can say 6x and a negative 12x. Let's think about that. 6x and a negative 12x is a negative 6x, right? So that goes here. And then minus 1. Bring down the minus 1. Then we go through the process all over again. First divided by first. So negative 6x divided by 2x. Negative 6 divided by 2 is a negative 3. X divided by x is 1. So you're just left with negative 3. So that goes here. Then we multiply. A negative 3 times 2x is a negative 6x. If you notice correctly, those have to be identical, just like these were. A negative 3 times a positive 3 is a negative 9. Then we subtract. Let's go ahead and simplify this expression. It helps to do that. The opposite of a negative 6x is a positive 6x. The opposite of a negative 9 is a positive 9, right? All right, so let's simplify this. Negative 6x minus a negative 6x means the same thing as a negative 6x plus 6x, which is 0. That's what you wanted. Negative 1 subtract a negative 9 means the same thing as saying negative 1 plus 9. And negative 1 plus 9 is 8. So that goes here. So there's your constant. You're done because you got your constant. The degree of a constant is 0. The degree of this linear factor is 1. You're done. So the degree here is less than the degree here. So therefore, your quotient is equal to 4x minus 3. Your remainder is equal to 8. And you can also write it as the quotient, which is 4x minus 3, plus the remainder divided by the divisor, which is 2x plus 3. So either one of those is fine. This is the one that you're going to use in this course, though. This will be next semester. All right, so I think you have enough to where you could divide polynomials where you're given a quadratic divided by a linear using long division. So that's called, for us, it'll be called type 1 problem. So that's our type 1 problem for this lesson on dividing polynomials, a quadratic divided by a linear polynomial. All right, so that's going to be the end of this lesson.